Welcome to Libresva Tech Clips. I'm Jenny, and today we are going to talk about the recipient verification. The recipient verification is used to validate the email addresses of our recipients and to reject, at the gateway level, emails for recipients that don't exist, but most importantly to count correctly your license usage. This verification can be configured in two modes. The first is the valid recipient list, a list of recipients which is kept updated on board ESG, and that can have as its source an imported list, a manually updated one, but also an imported list that's updated by Microsoft 365, G Suite, or LDAP connector. The second is the dynamic verification, a dynamic mode where ESG every time asks the mail server if the email address exists. The valid recipient list is a list that is kept on board ESG that can be found under Admin Area, Mail Transport, and Recipient Verification. This list contains all the recipients we want to accept emails for. The easiest way to manage it is manually, where you can insert valid recipients in the list or modify them. It is also possible to upload an existing list through a text file. So export from a source that we have the list of valid recipients and import it into the gateway. This manual solution works only for small installations with few recipients. The list can also be managed automatically, so it can be linked to external sources to import a list and keep it up to date with the lists available on these external sources. Microsoft 365 and G Suite connectors can be configured through the Integrations menu. On our docs site, you'll find guides that step-by-step help you configure these connectors. On the other hand, we can connect the LDAP sets directly from the appliance. LDAP sets can be grouped, and each group refers to the same list of users. So if more than one LDAP set provides information for the same username, those information will be unified. Separate groups will create different users. Usually, only one set per group is configured, but you can have more complex configurations. To configure each set is required the standard parameters of an LDAP configuration. Here, we enter the scope of LDAP sets, where there is a fairly large variability. It depends on how the trees are structured. We always recommend using an LDAP browser to test the query and verify that it works. And once found the parameters, you can configure them in the ESG. Regarding LDAP configuration for the most popular systems, like Exchange On-Prem, Zimbra, Domino, on the configuration screen, you will find the suggested parameters, the ones that work in Standard Configuration S. It's important that these connectors import valid recipients, meaning valid email addresses for which to accept emails, only on domains that are configured on the relay table. So if the LDAP set returns addresses on other domains that are not configured on the relay table, these will be ignored. Once the connectors have been configured on the Integrations menu, we need to enable them. So we need to go back to the valid recipient configuration, where we'll find the available connectors, and we will be able to test them and enable them once verified that they work properly. In that moment, you can also launch a manual import to start populating the valid recipient list from that connector, and then configure subsequent hourly automatic imports. If this feature is enabled, every hour ESG will connect to these external connectors and will keep the valid recipient list updated. Last important point, the list is always updated by addition, meaning that the new email addresses that are found in these connectors are appended to the valid recipient list. Email addresses that are no longer in the external connectors are not removed automatically from the valid recipient list. This is a safety concern, as to avoid that temporary configuration problems on these external sources of information, over which we have no control, lead to rejecting emails. So email addresses that were valid at any point in history remain valid. You can delete them manually using a valid recipient list cleanup tool, which shows email addresses that should be removed and asks the admin for confirmation. It is an extremely fast operation. It's quick, but always under admin consent.